Good morning. We are in Group C7 and welcome to a crash course on global economics. First of all, let's start by understanding what macroeconomics or global economics as we call it actually means. Global economics is a branch of economics that studies how the aggregate economy basically behaves. In such a study, various phenomena such as inflation, price indices, national income, employment, etc. are observed. Over the next 10 minutes, we'll be discussing the following topics in some depth and we'll try and take up some global cases which would help us better develop our understanding. Let's start with global accounting. Global accounting is basically measuring the economy and analyzing different factors that contribute to the growth of the economy. To better develop our understanding of the growth accounting, we'll consider the case of the ghost cities in China and China's rationale behind building those ghost cities. Over the past few years, China has been building these ghost cities throughout their landscape, and in these cities, actually no one lives. Let's understand GDP first. GDP, or the gross domestic product, is the sum total of all the services and products that are made within the boundaries of the nation. In the picture depicted here, we can see how various stakeholders interact with the various financial institutions in the nation. We can see how households, the government, the firms, and the rest of the world interact with the global markets and the financial markets in an institution. But what's GDP mathematically? Here's the equation. GDPY is equal to C, the consumption of the households, plus I, the investments made by the firm, plus G, the spendings of the government, plus X minus M, that is the next net imports of the nation. Let's get back to the case of China. As you can see in this curve, the government expenditures of China by 2015 rose to close to 43%. China is the only big economy nation to feature in this list. If we have a look at the equation of the GDP again, China has been playing with the G part to bloat their economy by building a rampant infrastructure. How sustainable is that move? I leave it to the jurisdiction of the listeners. Over the years, economists have developed many indices to measure the economy of a nation. One very interesting index that they have come up is the Big Mac index, wherein the price of the Big Mac burger, the McDonald's Big Mac burger, is measured in different economies, and that is used as a yardstick to measure how well the economy is doing. It's a good time in our discussion to look at the great debate between the classical and the Keynesian economics. Let's start with classical economics first. The idea of classical economics was floated by Adam Smith back in 1800s. Basically, the idea revolved around the fact of laissez-faire, that is, leaving things to take their own course without any interference. Adam Smith advocated that the government should not interfere in the economics of a country or a region. Let's take an example of a traffic jam. Suppose there is a traffic jam. Adam Smith would advocate that the traffic jam would resolve itself on its own once the peak hours are over. Let's look at the other way now. Here is the Keynesian economics. The idea was floated by John Milton Keynes after the Great Depression, when the economists realized that the classical economics does have failure points. Keynesians believe that the government intervention is required to achieve the resolution of an economic issue at a much faster pace. As in Keynes' own words, we'll all be dead in the long run. The next topic we'll be discussing today is the monetary policy. To develop our understanding of the monetary policy, we'll be discussing the hyperinflation case in Zimbabwe that took place around 2008 and 2010. What is a monetary policy? These are the actions the central banks take to influence the country's money supply and the overall economy. The basic aim is to maintain a balance of money supply. If the money supply is too quick, it leads to hyperinflation, and if the money supply is too slow, it hampers the economic growth of the country. In India, the money supply and the monetary policies are controlled by the Reserve Bank of India. The levers they have at hand are buying and selling of treasury bonds, interest rates, and establishing reserve requirements. This is how ideally a monetary policy would work. The banks would print more money, which would lead to easier loans. Easier loans for the industry would again lead to higher industrial growth since they'll invest more money in their development. All in all, this would lead to an economy growth in the economy. Let's reflect back what we studied on the hyperinflation case of Zimbabwe. Zim- uh, Post their independence in 1980s, Zimbabwe government started printing uncalculated amount of currency to support their economy. But coupled with corruption and poor policy implementation, the economy went haywire and resulted in the graph that is in front of us. We can see that the inflation touched 475 by the end of 2007, post which the Zimbabwe government stopped calculating the inflation figures. When the damage repair was started, $1 was equal to 1 quadrillion Zimbabwean dollars. Now let's look at the sister concern of monetary policies, the fiscal policies. Understanding, Developing an understanding of the fiscal policies would help us to understand what exactly went wrong in the Greece and what exactly is the European crisis all about. Fiscal policies. Fiscal policies refers to the combined governmental decisions regarding a country's taxing and spendings. These policies go hand in hand with the monetary policies. As a government, they have two levers by which they can monitor the fiscal policies: the taxes and the government spendings. In India, the Ministry of Finance handles the fiscal policies of the country. Now, this is how a fiscal policy would ideally be implemented. For example, the government raises the tax rates. An increased tax rate would increase the government income, that would increase the government spending eventually. A higher government spending would lead to more jobs and a higher infrastructure developmental rate. This infrastructure development would aid the higher economic growth. Adding more jobs and higher industrial growth would eventually lead to a higher economic growth, as is aimed by the fiscal policies. Now, now let's see what went wrong in the Greece. When European Union was formed, more developed nations started lending money to the less developed nations like Greece and Portugal to help them catch up in the development race. But this monetary move was not meant by the right fiscal policies, and eventually Greece defaulted on its loan. As an overcommitment issue, EU lended the money again and again to these countries in a hope that they'll recover the money one day, but only to fail every time. The result is well depicted by the graph and the cartoon strip we have for you. If you want to know more about the global economics, scan any of these QR codes. One of them would take us to the professor, while the other one would ask you to buy the book. Thank you.